Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the January 27th, 2023 Florida Housing Finance Corporation Board meeting. And thanks for coming out on this chilly day. So we'll call the meeting to order. Sheila Freeney, would you please?
Ron Lieberman. Here. Ryan Benson.
Here.
Larry Creedle. Sandra Einhorn. Mario Ficella.
Here.
David Hall.
Here.
Dev Matwani.
Here.
And Meredith Ivy.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, so is there any public comment on the agenda items? There's a microphone right up here that you can come up and comment. Seeing none, we'll move on.
Introductions.
Right, so I'd like to make a couple of introductions. You probably see a couple new faces on the board here. To my left on the end, Acting Secretary to the DEO is Meredith Ivy. And then we have former Speaker Larry Creedle on my right over here. So welcome. We look forward to working with you and having your input.
Thank you.
Very good. So next on the agenda, we'll approve the minutes of the December 9th, 2022 board meeting. Do I have a motion?
Motion. Second.
Any discussion? With no discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, so Executive Director Price, is there any items on the consent agenda that have been asked to been pulled by the Board of Directors?
Thank you, Chairman. I have talked with all the board members, and as of now, I have not had any items requested to be pulled from the consent agenda, but I will make the request one more time to the board now. It appears there are none.
Do I have a motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Okay. Next, we have Ryan Benson with an audit committee update.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The audit committee convened on Thursday, January 26, 2023. First order of business was approving the December 8th, 2022 meeting minutes. That was approved. First item on the agenda was a presentation by John DeSanto, a partner with Ernst & Young. Mr. DeSanto presented to the audit committee the audit plan for the 2022 FHFC financial audit. Other items on the agenda discussed were the Inspector General and Executive Director's performance evaluations, as well as the approval of the audit committee and audit committee OIG charters. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. So just I wanted to add something. I think this might need to get a motion here with regard to the audit committee. I thought there was a little confusion with regard to Executive Director Price's evaluation. As part of the audit committee, we did evaluations on IG Hurst and Executive Director Price. And I was under the assumption that with the motion on Executive Director Price, that the salary increase of 8.5% was part of the motion, but I think there was confusion. So I guess I'll ask the question first whether or not I am indeed confused and whether that passed or not, as you recall.
I also thought there was some confusion, but my presumption from the meeting and the review would be, and if we need to clarify the motion, would be that we do grant the request of 8.5%.
Okay, so why don't we clarify the motion to grant the 8.5% salary increase retroactive to January 1st, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and board members.
So next, we'll move on to legal. Mr. Hugh Brown.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Hugh Brown, I'm General Counsel here at the corporation. Before your consideration today is case number 2023-003VW, Citadel Village, LLC. This petitioner received an award of sale, ELI, and bond financing, as well as 4% housing credits under RFA 2017-108 for a 96-unit development in Miami-Dade County. This petition requests a waiver of Rule 6748.0072, sub 21, sub B, to obtain an extension of its firm loan commitment. This proposed development entered credit underwriting in May of 2018, but beginning in July of 2019, Citadel began requesting and was granted 7 extensions to this firm loan commitment deadline, ultimately extending it to December 27th, 2022. They now ask for an 8th extension, pushing the deadline to June 26, 2023. Initially, the development ran into problems of insufficient resources compounded by the developing pandemic and increasing construction costs. They replaced the development team, began to address the shortfalls. These issues required petitioner to seek further financing, non-corporation financing, to cover the increased costs, and it obtained final approval for this in February of 2022. Since then, petitioner reports his development team has spent or committed over $750,000 on fees and costs associated with environmental and geotechnical reports, surveys, replatting, market studies, attorneys, and civil and architectural plans. Citadel now reports that the site plan approval package is nearly ready for submission. It is just shy one survey. After submission, there will be another 90 days until permit-ready plans will be complete. If all goes as planned, Citadel projects it will present its credit underwriting report to the board in June of 2023. Attached to the petition are letters from the mayor of Miami-Dade and several other entities expressing support and requesting the board grant Citadel its requested extension. While the granting of this many extensions to a proposed development is unprecedented, the staff believes the circumstances here are extraordinary, and they support this 8th extension. Also, the representatives of Citadel have been asked to appear here today to explain their current situation and to answer any questions you may have. Staff recommends the board grant this request for a waiver of the rule, subject to Citadel's appearance and explanation today, and extend the firm loan commitment deadline to June 26, 2023. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve staff recommendation. Second.
Any discussion?
Are we going to hear?
Ron,
Are we going to hear from them?
There's a button.
Oh, hello. You want us to hear from them before we vote?
Certainly. It'd be better than hearing from them after you vote, I think.
Okay.
I think this is on. Good morning. My name is Jim Boyd. I'm with Rural American Development, and I'm here to answer any of your questions.
I have a question. So in terms of getting a loan commitment, is that after, you listed a bunch of things, so is that after it goes into credit underwriting, it will get the loan commitment? Is that correct, or?
Am I on? Okay,
You're on.
yes. Yes, so the firm loan commitment issued from Florida Housing occurs after the completion of the credit underwriting report, for which the extensions and the necessary items in the petition that Hugh mentioned that the applicant is waiting on need to be completed.
Right, and the extension here is now to June 26, 2023, and that sounded like it's around the same time that underwriting would be complete?
That's right,
Okay.
because the underwriting has to complete before the firm loan commitment will be issued. So the deadline in our rule requirement relates to the firm loan commitment, but the key piece to getting there is that credit underwriting report completion.
Okay, and then maybe you can kind of just briefly explain why we're on the 8th extension here.
Yes, sir, I'd be happy to. And maybe the easiest way to look at this is in 3 parts. What happened with the initial application, which we weren't part of, and the initial development team, I can't explain what happened there. But a few years after the initial award, that team, that applicant was not going to get the deal done. So we talked to Florida Housing. They asked us to come in, not Florida Housing, but the owner asked us to come in and take over the development. And we said, fine, but the deal was short, several $1 million. It had been undersized from the beginning. And so we felt that there were several different pots, this is in Miami, that would help us get across that finish line. And unfortunately, due to COVID and other political things that happened, it took us about 2 years to get the final financial commitment, which we got 11 months ago. So in my opinion, the 3rd phase has begun. I essentially got my invitation to underwriting last February, and we've been moving forward as you would with any other development.
And the municipalities are all on board now. I think I read that here.
Correct.
Right?
And they're all participating, whether
Right.
it's Miami, Dade County, Community Affairs, et cetera. We've got several different sources of funding to get us across that bridge without coming back to the board.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
I just have one. Do you foresee any issues as far as you meeting this June date? Because if you don't meet the June date, then we got to vote again to give a 9th extension, so.
Right now, no, but I can, what might happen in the next 6 months. But the bottom line is the key to getting through our CUR and getting presented is our planning cost reviews, the longest lead time item. We will have plans in March, and we foresee no problem getting a CUR to the board in June. Now, another pandemic or other issue I can't tell you about. And right now, I'm not willing to bet anything. But no, according to our professionals and everything else, we're on track to do what we've committed to.
Mike David.
Shuts off on his own, I'm sorry. You're saying the only issue you have right now is the planning that you have to...
We have to get up to 80% planned so the underwriter will be able to do their plan and cost review. And there's several steps in Miami you got to go along the way, whether it's replatting, site plan approval, et cetera, and all those things have happened, and we expect our 80% plans in March. So we'll be able to meet the June board with a CUR.
Thank you.
How
Brian?
many years and how many extensions has this development been under your purview?
Royal American was brought in 2019. I can't give you the exact date. I don't have the schedule in front of me. But it was made clear, and we've had multiple conversations with staff along the way, that the development process was not going to begin on this development until the funds were in place to do so. When we came into it, it couldn't pass the basic CUR. I mean, you couldn't submit it for underwriting because it was underwater. So we did not begin sort of the standard development process until we had a firm commitment and all the funds, which was February of last year.
Thank you.
And just one question, how confident are you now in your capital stack?
Very confident.
Okay.
I mean, we've been doing business with Florida Housing early 80s, since before tax credits, 50 some odd plus developments. We can get this done.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? If none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion passes. Okay, on to the next, which is multifamily programs. Marissa.
Thank
Item
you.
A.
Thank you. Good morning, Board. Item A is our request for approval of the Review Committee recommendations for RFA 2022-101. This is sale financing for the preservation of elderly developments. This is a new RFA for us that we have been able to put together, so we're excited about it. On November 14th, Florida Housing issued this RFA offering just over $2.5 million in State Department incentive loan funding in conjunction with tax-exempt bonds and non-competitive 4% housing tax credits for applicants that were proposing the preservation of affordable multifamily housing for the elderly. The deadline for applications was December 28th, 2022. We received 3 applications in response to this RFA. Our review committee members were assigned by our executive director and performed their review and scoring independently and convened together at the review committee for this RFA on January 12th, where they carried out the funding selection process in accordance with the RFA. And you have a link to the individual scores in your materials. Also in your materials, you have the all applications chart that's Exhibit A, and that lists the eligible and ineligible applications. All the applications were eligible here. And the review committee considered the following motions. A motion to approve the scoring results that you have in Exhibit A, as well as the recommendations for funding that's set out in your materials in Exhibit B. And they also considered a motion to recommend that you, the board, approve those scoring results in Exhibit A and the recommendation for funding in Exhibit B. And those motions passed unanimously. So my recommendation today is that you go ahead and approve the review committee's recommendations and adopt the scoring results of the 3 applications in Exhibit A and authorize the tentative selection of funding of the 1 application set out on Exhibit B for funding. If no notice of intent to protest or formal written protest is filed, that application will be invited to enter credit underwriting. And if there is a notice of intent to protest or formal written protest, then at the completion of all litigation, we will present any recommended orders to you and then issue a credit underwriting invitation after that point. There is no sale funding remaining at this RFA after this tentative funding recommendation, and that is the recommendation today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, B.
Okay, B, this is our approval for the review committee recommendations for RFA 2022-201. It's housing credit financing for affordable housing developments located in medium and small counties. On November 10th, we issued RFA 2022-201, offering just over $15.6 million in 9% low-income housing tax credit financing for applicants proposing developments in medium and small counties. The deadline for applications was December 28th, 2022. We received 52 applications in response to this RFA. The review committee members independently reviewed and scored their assigned portions of the applications and then presented those scores at the January 17th, 2023 review committee meeting. In your materials, you have a link to those individual scores that were presented at the review committee meeting. And also in your materials, you have the all applications chart that's Exhibit C, and that lists the eligible and ineligible applications in application number order. And the review committee at that meeting considered a motion to approve the scoring results you have in Exhibit C that I just mentioned, as well as the recommendations for funding after the funding selection process was carried out on Exhibit D. And they also considered a motion to recommend that you, the board, approve those scoring results in Exhibit C and the recommendations for funding in Exhibit D. And those motions passed the committee unanimously. So our recommendation here is for you to approve the review committee's recommendation to adopt the scoring results of the 52 applications and authorize the tentative selection of the 8 applications set out in Exhibit D for funding. If, like I said previously, and I will say in all of these upcoming RFA review committee recommendations, if there is no notice of intent to protest or formal written protest filed, we will go ahead and issue invitations to enter credit underwriting to those 8 applications. If there is any notice of intent to protest or formal written protest, we will come to you at the conclusion of any litigation with a recommended order to proceed with invitations to enter credit underwriting. There is $431,903 in housing credit funding remaining. As the RFA provides, any remaining funding would be distributed as approved by the board. We are not making a recommendation to you for that remaining funding at this point. We would wait to see the conclusion of all litigation relative to the 9% credits before coming back to you with any funding recommendations. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. C.
Okay, C. And we'll try to slow down a little bit. I know, running through these. There's a lot of items here. So this one exciting also, 9% review committee recommendations for RFA 2022-202. That is our housing credit financing for affordable housing developments located in Broward, Duval, Hillsborough, Orange, Palm Beach, and Pinellas County. We call our large 9% RFA. We issued this RFA on November 10th, offering just almost $16.5 million in 9% housing credit financing for applicants proposing developments in those counties that I mentioned. The deadline for applications was December 29th, 2022. We received 15 applications in response to the RFA. The review committee members independently reviewed and scored their assigned portions of the applications that were submitted, and then presented those at the January 18th review committee meeting. Then carried out the funding selection process as well in accordance with the RFA. And again, you have the link to those RFA results in your materials. In your materials, you also have Exhibit E, which reflects the all applications chart on the eligible and ineligible applications in their assigned application number order. And the review committee considered the following motions: a motion to approve the scoring results on Exhibit E and the recommendations for funding set out in your materials in Exhibit F. And also a motion to recommend that you, the board, approve those scoring results on Exhibit E and the recommendations for funding in Exhibit F. And those motions passed unanimously. So I'm recommending also here today that you approve those review committee recommendations and adopt the scoring results of the 15 applications that were received, and authorize the tentative selection of funding for the 6 applications set out in Exhibit F. And again, if there's no notice of intent to protest or formal written protest, we'll go ahead and proceed with invitation to enter credit underwriting. If there is any notice of intent to protest or formal written protest, we will come to you at the conclusion of that with any recommended orders for invitations to enter credit underwriting at that point. And as with the last RFA, we have $345,000 in housing credit funding remaining, so there's a little bit remaining. Again, the RFA reflects that remaining funding would be distributed by you as the board with your recommendation. We are holding off on a recommendation for funding at this point. Thank you.
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, D.
Okay, we're getting there. This is the last 9% RFA. This is our Miami-Dade 9% RFA, the request for approval of the review committee recommendations for RFA 2022-203, housing credit financing for affordable housing developments located in Miami-Dade County. We issued this RFA on November 10th, 2022, offering just over $6.8 million in 9% housing credit financing for applicants proposing developments for affordable multifamily housing located in Miami-Dade County. The deadline for applications was December 28th. Florida Housing received 29 applications in response to this RFA. The review committee members independently reviewed and scored their assigned portions of the applications and convened at the January 17th review committee meeting to report those scores and carry out the funding selection process that's set forth in the RFA. And you have the link to the individual RFA scores in your materials. You have the 2022-203 all applications chart in your materials at Exhibit G, which lists the eligible and ineligible applications in their assigned application number order as well. The review committee considered a motion to approve the scoring results that you have in Exhibit G and the recommendations for funding set out in Exhibit H, and a motion to recommend that you, the board, approve those scoring results in Exhibit G and the recommendations for funding in Exhibit H. So my recommendation for you today is to approve the committee's recommendation adopting the scoring results of the 29 applications that were submitted and authorize the tentative selections of the 2 applications set out in Exhibit H for funding. And if no formal written protest is filed or notice of protest is filed, we'll proceed with issuing the invitations to enter credit underwriting. And if there is any litigation or formal written protest, we'll come to you after that point with recommended orders and issue invitations to credit underwriting at that time. There's $323,530 in housing credit funding remaining. We are not going to make a recommendation to you at this point to do anything with that remaining funding. Thank you.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
I have a quick question. The 323 remaining that we're not using, does that disappear each budget year, or does that just pool up for our discretionary use?
Usually what happens is we'll come to you at a point later after litigation when we see what's remaining in all of those RFAs. You know, we also issue permanent supportive housing RFAs later in the year, and sometimes we'll make additional funding recommendations related to to those if we have additional funding available, but we do not lose it.
Okay.
We will use it.
Just want to make sure there wasn't
Yep.
like a shot clock on it or anything.
Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 E.
Okay, exciting, the last one for the review committee recommendations. This is RFA 2022-205, our sale RFA. It's sale financing for affordable multifamily housing developments to be used in conjunction with tax-exempt bonds and non-competitive housing credits. We issued this RFA on November 14th, offering $60,240,702 in sale funding, and that again is to be used in conjunction with tax-exempt bonds and non-competitive housing credits. And we also had in this RFA additional just over $18.5 million in National Housing Trust Fund financing. And these were for applicants that were proposing developments for families or elderly demographic. And that National Housing Trust Fund addition to the pot helps us pull down some deeper targeted low-income units in the developments that we fund. So we're pulling all of those resources together for this. We received 46 applications in response to the RFA. Just as all the other RFAs I've talked about, the review committee members independently reviewed and scored their assigned portions of the applications, and then they presented those scores at the January 18th review committee meeting and carried out the funding selection process set forth in the RFA. And you have as Exhibit I the all applications chart that reflects the eligible and ineligible applications. And the review committee at that meeting considered the following motions: a motion to approve the scoring results you have in Exhibit I and the recommendations for funding set out in Exhibit J, and a motion to recommend that you, the board, approve those scoring results in Exhibit I and the recommendations for funding in Exhibit J. So I am making the recommendation to you today to do so and approve the review committee recommendations to adopt the scoring results of the 46 applications and authorize the tentative selection of the 10 applications you have in Exhibit J for funding. If there's no formal protest or notice of written protest, we will proceed with those invitations to enter credit underwriting. If there is any litigation, we'll come to you after that point with any recommended orders and issue invitations to enter credit underwriting after that point. There was $666,702 in sale funding remaining. That was not enough to independently finance any of the remaining eligible applications in the RFA. But as previously discussed with the 9% housing credit RFAs, at this point in time, we do not want to make any recommendation also for this remaining funding available until we understand what's come out of any litigation related to this RFA. Thank you.
So moved.
Second?
So we can't like find something to do with $1,000, so we're not presenting 666 as a budget amount, please?
There will, a number will, we'll see what happens.
Okay, it's math.
One thing, can you define what the requirements are to get National Housing Trust Fund dollars?
There are many requirements, and I would also look to my colleague David Westcott, who administers the National Housing Trust Fund program, if I mess anything up with that. But essentially, it's you commit to a certain number of units that are targeted at 22% or below area median income. But in order to be eligible for those resources, there are certain federal requirements that your development site has to meet, and some of those are, significant environmental requirements. You cannot impact a wetland. That's a very big one, and there are a lot of others. The Section 3 requirements apply. You do not have to comply with the Davis-Bacon requirements, but all of we feel confident that a significant amount of applications were able to take on that funding resource as demonstrated by the amount of applications that applied for funding.
I know we've had problems in the past with that particular funding source, so that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. So we continue to monitor that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 F.
Mr. Chair, if I may be indulged just as the conclusion of the RFAs, I wanted to thank some staff really quickly.
Please.
Thank you. As you may have noticed in all the write-ups, these applications were due at the very end of December between the Christmas, Hanukkah holidays, and New Year's, and it was a really significant pull by the development community to make sure they got their applications in, and then staff to score those immediately and get all of that information squared away, even from our folks in IT, because they're online submissions and everything. So I just wanted to thank the development community for applying and meeting our hardcore deadlines, and a lot of that had to do with CHIRP. Honestly, we were trying to get things in right at the last minute to make sure those program requirements were met, and really to staff for pulling together and scoring very quickly. This also demonstrates, I mean, it's sort of historic that we've had applications submitted and coming to you with recommendations in less than a month. And so that is due to our staff upgrading our scoring process, the Exhibit A that has been enhanced. So Kevin Tatro and his team in Development Finance, Gene Salmonson in our Allocations Department have just really shepherded this process. So what's happening is we're going to get the units out quicker because we're not spending 3 months scoring the application. So I just wanted to give a shout out to them. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you for the team, and thank you for your leadership on that.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, we don't often get to talk about, an actual, measurable cut in the time that it takes, and this is Florida Housing and our staff. I'm very proud of all of them being able to, and we can take credit for this. Essentially what has happened in the past, as you probably all remember, those of you who are here, is those scoring results would usually be the second board meeting after the RFAs came in. So there's a measurable 6 weeks right there that we're cutting off the development time and helping deliver affordable housing quicker. So congratulations to you and your team, Marissa. Thank you.
Thank you, Trey. And I'll move on to F if that's acceptable.
Yes,
Thank
please.
you. Okay, this is rural development, so we're jumping into rural development season. We would like to begin our rural development process by scheduling a workshop to solicit comments concerning Rule Chapter 6721 of the Florida Administrative Code, which is our non-competitive affordable multifamily rental housing programs, as well as 6748, that is the competitive portion of the rules, which also includes our qualified allocation plan, the QAP, that's incorporated by reference into Rule Chapter 6748. So just as a reminder, and we have some new members here, this is really where we start kicking off looking into our next rounds of funding. And so the QAP is the required format for us to tell the world what we're doing with our housing credit allocation. And that will run in conjunction with legislative session when we find out how much appropriation we're getting as well too in the sale program. So this is really to kick off our workshops for that process, and we're planning to hopefully hold our first workshop on February 23rd. And so our recommendation is to request that you authorize us to proceed with the 2023 rule development process. Thank you.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
G.
Thank you. This item is much awaited by some folks in the development community who have pending CHIRP applications. This is our request to amend the CHIRP 2022 ITP to extend the deadline to close on limited partnership agreements. So this is a very limited extension request. On April 29th, as you may recall, the board approved us to issue the ITP for the CHIRP program. We issued that on May 9th. We received, and we received many applications for CHIRP funding, I think about 68, but 38 of those were for housing credit, specifically 9% credit request applications. So this is just about the 9% CHIRP awards. Those applications, three of those returned the allocation or had their allocation rescinded, and so we have allocated just over $15 million in additional housing credit funding for CHIRP. And the deadline for CHIRP applications to close on their limited partnership or limited liability operating agreements in the ITP was January 31st. And we had that deadline earlier than the additional loan funding CHIRP applications. That deadline is March 9th, and it remains to be March 9th at this point in time. The reason we did the 9% deadline earlier is because we were looking out for ourselves in a way because it takes less staff capacity to interact with the closing of LPAs. That's really done on that external side. When it's a loan closing, we've got our staff, we're working with our underwriters, we're working with our counsel, so that's why the additional loan funding date was later. Well, what we've seen through the processing of these applications is some of these developments have HUD approvals that they're waiting on, and they cannot close without getting that squared away. There's some local government approvals that they need, and so we feel confident that all of the applications that are for asking for and have received the 9% CHIRP awards really are working towards that, and we want to give an additional period of time to get those LPAs squared away. And we even have an update, like your materials say, as of January 19th, we had 20 housing credit developments of those that were submitted that had closed on their LPAs or limited liability operating agreements, and that number's up to 23 now. So these folks are getting these things moving. So we are recommending that you approve our recommendation to extend the deadline for the closing of those limited partnership agreements to March 10th, 2023, and that's in conjunction with the closing deadline for the additional loan funding in the CHIRP program. Thank you.
Motion to approve?
So move.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, we're on H, right?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. And to make this quick, but also wanted to talk about it publicly, time out. That's a bad sign. Okay. I don't want to talk too fast, but so item H on the agenda and in the materials is the request for approval to issue an invitation to participate in a 2023 CHIRP program. And we are today asking to table that item. Staff wants to remove that item for consideration at this point. And that is because yesterday Senate Bill 102 was filed, which included in section 44 of that bill a potential program that would allocate $100 million in essentially a type of CHIRP viability loan program for developments that are struggling in the pipeline. So we think it's wise and prudent at this point to hold off on recommending the utilization of any future funding sources of Florida Housing and see where the path of Senate Bill 102 goes with this potential appropriation of $100 million to do some type of viability program. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there a motion?
Motion to table.
Second.
Any discussion or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, last item. This is our request to, for your approval to issue an RFA, request for applications for the rental recovery loan program. So this is the result of Hurricane Ian and Hurricane Nicole, which made landfall this fall, that significantly impacted a major portion of our state. The legislature convened in special session in December to provide disaster relief for these storms, and during the special session, $90 million was appropriated specifically to the rental recovery loan program to provide rental housing and development of rental housing in areas of the state hardest hit by Hurricanes Ian and Nicole. We are currently reviewing the data regarding damage-impacted counties in order to develop a funding framework for the program, and we plan to hold a workshop, should you approve this item, on February 15th, and ideally issue an RFA at the end of March 2023, with review committee recommendations hopefully coming to you at the June board meeting. And that is very ambitious, we know, but we know how important it is to get the resources out, so we want to make sure we also have enough time to workshop and folks understand that there's sites that are able to be developed in these areas and everything that we'll need to consider going along with that. So our recommendation to you today is to authorize staff to proceed with the development of an RFA for RRLP funding. Thank you.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yes, I appreciate the very aggressive schedule as someone from this area that was impacted. Thank you.
Thank you.
Put your mic on there.
How long do you think after, we approve in was it March? In March, at the March meeting, how long do you think it'll take to get the funding out from that point?
Well, I think what we're anticipating is that the RFA would be issued in March, and we'd probably be coming to you with the recommendations in around June, early summer. And then it's a matter of, hopefully we're issuing invitations to enter credit underwriting really soon, because no one's fighting about it, and no one wants to litigate, and they just know how important it is to trust that we've, done the right scoring and selection process. So we won't have any 2-month delay for litigation. That won't happen at all, but that may occur, of course. But we would get into no later than, the end of summer, early fall with invitations to enter credit underwriting, and then, those developments moving through that 12-month credit underwriting process. Thank you.
For us, that's quick.
Yeah.
Anything further? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Now it's the David Westcott Show, Home Program Development Update.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So our home dollars we receive through HUD from the federal government each year. And we use those home dollars for a variety of single-family and multifamily purposes, including, putting out applications for competitive rental developments. So the two developments that are listed here on your agenda today receive funding through competitive applications. We usually target our home dollars towards rural areas. And also make the home dollars available at 0% interest for not-for-profits. And that's a way to capacity build for some of those not-for-profits. So you have not-for-profits that will come in and partner with for-profits. And in order to, accomplish the financing of these deals, Florida Housing will also put their home loan into second position behind a first mortgage loan from usually a bank lender. Now these deals are fully credit underwritten, and that includes requirements for payment performance bonds and guarantees as well. So the two deals in front of you today, the first one is Village Springs. That's a 50-unit development here in North Walton County, where the borrower, Workforce Housing Ventures, Inc., a small not-for-profit, partnered with Brian Smith and GHD Construction Services, Inc. Mr. Smith was not the borrower, but was a co-developer and general contractor on this deal. So as you could see in the board write-up in the informational items, this deal faced numerous issues during construction, including some stop work orders and issues with the Water Management District, and the borrower declared the contractor, in default, intent to declare default, and turned to the surety company where the PNP bond resided to ask them to come in to then take over construction and finish the deal. The surety company declined, and that fight continues to this day to try to get them to come in and make the bond good. So this was originally an info item for you all, just to let you know that we were having issues with these two developments. But earlier this week, we received a letter, and I think that's been distributed to you all. You should have that in your materials, from PNB, Community Bank. It's actually from their law firm. It says Mead Law and Title on the top, where PNB is deciding to sell their note, and has offered Florida Housing, as the second mortgage holder, the first opportunity to buy the note. So we've taken this off of information and have this now in front of you to ask for some action to be taken based on this letter. So I guess, Mr. Chairman, I can put the staff recommendation out there and then give further background on this, or I don't
Yeah,
know.
we can do further background and discussion if we want. I mean, I'm going to have some things to say, so go ahead and make the motion and then
Okay,
Yeah.
great, thank you.
our
So-
recommendation, yeah.
Yes, so for Village Springs, the staff recommendation is that we request approval to enter negotiations with PNB Community Bank for the purchase of their first mortgage note, and for the board to delegate authority to the chairman to approve the terms of such purchase or agreement that we may be able to reach with PNB on the purchase of that first mortgage note. Further, we would request approval to issue any competitive solicitations that may be needed to protect Florida Housing's interest in the property and to move towards a successful outcome for this development.
Motion to approve staff recommendation.
Second.
So I'm going to lead discussion on this. First, I wanted to let the board know that I personally drove up to the site yesterday, because when I read the action item and then understood it was going to go to action, I didn't know what we were going to find, right? I mean, normally this thing has been sitting since July of last year. So I thought, I'd go up there and see a mess, which I was relieved that it wasn't a mess. Most of the units are dried in, and you do have some units with foundation and shell, but, the project is in pretty good shape. So, in my discussion with staff, I think it's wise for us to jump into the first position and purchase the note, provided that we do some due diligence prior to doing so. And one of them being, getting an engineer out there to assess the current condition of the property, and also a plan and cost review to see, kind of, what it's going to take to finish the job. There's a lot of legal that has to be done here with regard to reviewing the existing, first mortgage loan documents, as well as, the rights that we would have to step into the shoes and work with the surety on the payment and performance bond. But, provided that, we get positive indications from all that, I think it's in our best interest to purchase the first note and go out to bid and try to preserve these as affordable housing. Any other questions or discussion?
I have one. Whoever signed the first mortgage, what is their status? If we buy the note, are we going to foreclose? Where are we there?
So, thank you. Workforce Housing Ventures and Harold Sample is the principal of that, as the borrower, remains engaged in this, remains, working with engaging engineers to try to get past the stop work orders and some of the other permitting issues that came up with the Water Management District. We saw this week he's sent another letter to the surety saying that, hey, I've got these resolved, you need to step in and now, make good under the bond. So he's still engaged, but he's certainly defaulted on the first mortgage loan, which is why they're selling it. and has let us know that his not-for-profit is basically out of money going forward. So, yes, there would be some talk and negotiations and things that we would need to do with the current borrower, should we decide to go forward with this.
Okay, so they may be willing to step out.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Chairman, we had an appraisal done that came in at the end of November on this, as we were anticipating, where things were going here. And so Mark Fredericks with Amerinat is our construction loan servicer on this, and assisted us in helping to order the appraisal and then to do an analysis of that appraisal. And I think generally, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but the conclusion was, based on the as-is value in the appraisal and some other things in the analysis, that purchasing the first mortgage note would not likely put us in any worse position, as far as a loss, than if we just did nothing and allowed the first mortgage lender to foreclose or sell the note to someone who would foreclose on us. So our investment right now is about $1.8 million in federal home funds into this development. Of course, should that get foreclosed, we would need to use corporation resources to, reimburse HUD for the monies that were advanced. But so buying the first mortgage note should not put us in any worse financial position, quite possibly a lot better. And then just buy us time, put us in the driver's seat to evaluate, where do we go from here? And some of the recommendations to put out competitive solicitations are, to your point, Ron, are there other interested developers that could come in here and actually work with this and work with the local government and get this deal done for a cost that actually is reasonable to us overall. And those are things, along with other things that the chairman mentioned, that buying the first mortgage note and getting this time would allow us to figure out.
Yeah, my only concern there was if you had to foreclose, how long would that take, and would the condition of the property, change over that period of time?
Yes, and at this point, there are certain resolutions that the board's already enacted about working with property management companies that we have under contract that we can send out there to secure the property and keep it up, so that if there are delays, and it will take some time to find someone who can actually complete this deal, if that's what is the best path that that's determined, that yes, we would need to engage those and spend some extra money in doing so.
Thank you.
I just want to add one thing from the site visit. Excuse me. We also met with the first mortgage holder at the site, and he did mention to us that the local housing authority has a number of vouchers that can be applied to the project, if it gets completed. So it sounds like, there is a demand, and that demand could be filled. I mean, the supply could be filled with that demand at the local housing authority level. Did I explain that correctly?
Yes, you did. And the borrower had informed us of that as well, that if it can get done, there's certainly a huge need for affordable housing, here in Walton County, and that the local public housing authority does have those vouchers and is very interested in seeing this deal done, so that they can possibly, have tenants that can use those vouchers at this development site. And I think, I won't put words in Trey's mouth, but, we've been talking about this deal for quite a long time at senior management and other, meetings together. And, since it is our mission to provide affordable housing, if we, certainly can find a way to get this done and deliver the units in spite of these challenges that we've been left with here, I think that's the preference that Trey has, stated, and that we've been trying to, leave as a possible option open here.
Right.
This one gives me a lot of pause, which is unfortunate because it's an area where I know desperately needs affordable housing, and it's been years to try and do it. What makes me afraid of it is the business we're in versus being in this business, and a first position bank is so different than what we do, even though we're a second position bank with it. I have a lot of hesitation stepping into something that the private sector might sort out on its own anyway, and a number of how much are we going to spend in our due diligence? Our due diligence to make sure that our position is secure, we could spend $100,000 to figure out $1 million position. I don't want to do that. And if the private sector market steps in, it could get much more. It might get more aggressive, but then the affordable option comes off the table. If we're already in 1.8 million. The first position's 1.1 million roughly. I mean, 1 million and change with a shot clock on it. So we're gonna be in now 3 point some million. What's the value of this property from? You did an appraisal. What's our work in place plus land valuation? And just talking broadly in millions right now.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mark Fredericks, Senior Vice President with Amerinet. The appraisal came in. Currently, the as-is value is $2.5 million.
So we've got a 1.8 second position, so we are going to be putting ourselves definitely in an underwater position. I mean, we're the second position anyway. We're underwater, so we're just doubling down on that. I don't know. It's a struggle because I think that this area really needs it, and it's also not a business I want this group to be in, but I'm struggling with the decision.
Yeah, to make a few comments. I echo Ryan's concerns. I mean, I appreciate staff's willingness to pursue the route of purchasing it and taking on this added work, because it does help further the mission if we can keep it as an affordable project. That being said, these aren't easy when you get into litigation. There's a lot of money that's involved. There's a lot of time that's involved, and taking over a property that sits dormant for a while, that 2.5 deteriorates pretty quickly in terms of value as the property sits there. I'm also concerned a little concerned about the potential messaging it could send. I was surprised to hear this is the first time we're in that position, and I know we have a guarantee on our position, which sounds like it's underwater already. And so, I don't want to create a situation where others might end up stepping, kind of going this route. It seems like I'm sure other developers and guarantors have had issues, and they've probably figured it out. And this one, for whatever reason, just can't or doesn't want to. And so I don't want to create a situation where in the future we're put into more of these situations. That being said, again, I appreciate the intent, and I'm sure the 1.1 is probably secure. But when you add in the legal costs, when you add in the time and everything else to it, it just gives me pause to go that route, since that's not the business of the agency or the staff in terms of figuring out the actual real estate.
Any other questions?
One more, Mara. Sorry, just quick math. If we're in 2.9 on what Dev said, if we're in 2.9, it's worth. You said 2.5. I'm sorry.
Yes,
2.5 fire sale scenario. Let's say someone picks it up for 2. The first position is going to be made whole. Would we be then in a position where we could negotiate out our second position, we still have some value with it in order to preserve the affordability, but then the private sector has taken on this risk instead of us throwing another $1 million at the problem and handling the legal side. Is that a better option for us to negotiate out our second position to maintain affordability versus taking on a bank first position? Thank you.
What's your feeling about the bond on the property? I've been through that before, and they never want to pay, but they end up paying something. So,
Yes, I would have to get, advice from our council, and we used Neighbors, Giblin and Nickerson for the documents on this deal. We've gone back to them, and Junius Brown and one of his partners is giving us some advice on, what's best to do here in this workout scenario. I've not run into this with a surety company before, so I don't have experience to tell you what, has happened in the past, but, yeah, perhaps.
Just want to add one thing. I mean, obviously, in subordinate position, we're not in a position to negotiate with the surety.
right.
It's the borrower in the first, but, yes, this surety is, denied coverage based on, saying that it's not even in the construction phase, it's still in the design phase. So once you get out of the design phase, then there'll probably be defenses that they raise to, having to pay. But at the end of the day, would they pay something? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But I would hope so.
Laura, did you want to say something? Any other questions or discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
first, I just wanted to say thank you for going to the site personally yesterday and bringing your observations to us. I think that's very helpful to go see it in person. I know this is not an ideal position to be in. I think where my head is at with this, and perhaps I would ask of staff, is what are we trying to achieve by considering the first mortgage? Practically speaking, what happens if we don't? Just in plain language, what would happen if we did not do all the other considerations from the financing and the position of the agency aside?
So it's my understanding that if we decided that we did not want to buy the first mortgage note, the first mortgage lender would either foreclose or they would sell the note to another entity, quite possibly a for-profit developer, who would then foreclose, upon the property, including our second mortgage. And, at that point, I don't know, to Ryan, to your point, I don't know that we have any ability to negotiate. I don't know what kind of offers would come, or would it just be the person holding the first mortgage note that, forecloses for that amount? There are no higher bids, and we lose the entire $1.8 million.
Becomes a question as to what are our rights to protect our interests within the second.
Yeah.
Currently, because, we could also just as well step in, depends on how the document's written in terms of cure rights. It sounds like the guarantor is in default with us by virtue of being in default with the first.
Yes.
So, Mr. Chair, it seems like I know this just came up, and there's a short time frame, and there's a lot of kind of unanswered questions, not for anyone's fault, just because of the unfortunate timing of our meeting and this letter. So, kind of puts us in a predicament here, because we don't want to tie staff's hands into the agency's hands, but at the same time, we don't have full information. So I don't know if there's a way to, pass along some power to you as chair in the interim as that information comes, to light. Seeing that you've heard our concerns, I don't know legally what what the right route is, but it's just hard to make a decision today, not knowing these answers.
Well, I don't think there would be a large resource burden on us to at least see what our situation is legally, and even, stepping in, to the shoes of the first, and perhaps getting comfort as to where, what we really would be taking on with the project itself, if we're stepping into the first. So, maybe we kind of take this in steps, right? And maybe do some of that due diligence now, right? To get a sense of where we're at. And then we could either, if you want to pass on the authority to me to, approve going further, or if you want to take it back to the board, but it's not until our next meeting is March?
Yes, sir.
So it's March, so it's a little bit of time away, but,
They're already in default, though. I mean, there's a daily
Right.
clock on it.
there is a daily clock on it, that's right. So,
Could-
I don't know if my phone will turn on.
I'll turn mine off.
Yeah, so I was just gonna speak to, I think, Dev, part of your discussion involved the power with the chairman, and I think that was worked into the motion that we have on the floor. Isn't that right, David?
Yes, right, so it's to enter into negotiations with the bank, I say for the purchase of the first mortgage note, but, I mean, we could broaden that, to the chairman's delegated authority to, work with staff and our attorney to figure out the best course of action, and whether that includes, really stepping into the shoes of the first, or just pursuing our rights under the second.
Yeah, well, now I kind of think through it. Someone asked the question, Meredith asked the question of what happens. I mean, the first will foreclose. We will want to protect our position, so we'll be in a legal battle either way, and pursuing the guarantee. Controlling the first would actually give us a little more control over that process, and maybe even save us some money. As I think through this, we have 1.5 of our 1.8 position intact according to the appraisal, and a guarantee, as I understand it, to potentially pursue the balance. So from an economic, it was a good question, and from the economic standpoint, might be easier and cheaper to purchase the note. But again, so for economically, I guess I understand the position. Again, I'm just mostly concerned about creating a moral hazard, and also staff's time, and then additional costs that will occur through the process. So, but as long as the chair will be involved, as some of these questions are answered, to shepherd that and understand these concerns, then I'm fine moving forward with staff recommendation with the chair's involvement.
Okay, so I guess the motion will stay as it is, or do we need to tweak it a little
Or
bit?
do I need to amend my motion?
I think it needs to be amended. I guess the original motion, Dave talks about purchasing and getting it first, so we would have to amend it to take that out.
Yeah, it might be a little too narrow based on this discussion, so, probably, amend it to, ask for, authority to enter into negotiations with PNB Community Bank, and for, staff to pursue, other options as might be recommended to us by our attorney, and for the, the chairman to approve the final decision on whether to pursue the purchase or take another route that better protects Florida Housing's interests.
Okay, so.
Does that sound
Does that sound?
good? Was that a?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll take another.
Yeah, the only one one quick question. It'll take time for the first mortgage holder to foreclose. I mean, prior to the ability for them to do it prior to our next meeting is probably very slim, but I don't know.
Though there could be a, there could be a deed in lieu of foreclosure where, there's the possibility that
That's true.
that person is ready to just get
That's
out
true.
rather than go through foreclosure proceedings, hand over the deed in lieu, and then we're done.
Okay. All right, so how do?
So we
propose
just-
I amend my motion.
So could we just vote down this motion that's on and then come back with another
Another
to make it
motion?
more clear?
Okay,
That'll
so-
give Dave enough
right.
time to talk with the attorney. to
Okay.
come back.
So yeah, we'll go all in favor of the initial motion presented,
Aye.
so that it
No,
would
the
be,
initial- oh, the
we would
initial.
deny, right?
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
Deny.
it'd be no,
No.
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 okay, and the new motion,
Yeah, so I guess staff would
Recommendation.
request approval to pursue all options that may be available to us to best protect our interest, including the purchase of the mortgage note from the first mortgage lender, and for the board to delegate authority to the chairman to approve the final course of action chosen if that needs to be decided prior to the next board meeting.
So move.
is there a
Second.
second? Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay, one no.
Does that include both or just the one?
That's just the A,
Just the one?
yeah.
Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, B should be a little easier. All right, go ahead and present B.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So B, again, is a home rental development. This is 50 units in Highlands County. It involves a not-for-profit. This time it's the Highlands County Housing Authority, but they also partnered with Brian Smith and GHD Construction Services on this loan as well. Borrower declared the general contractor in default. Property is, the construction is not finished. There is a first mortgage lender in this, scenario also. The difference is that under this payment and performance bond, and it is with the same surety, at the end of December, we finally got an answer, the borrower did, that said, go ahead and finish construction, come back to us when you're done, and we'll settle up at that point. So, so the first mortgage lender is willing to stay in this until construction can be completed. The borrower is in the process of getting some quotes from general contractors to finish this. They've received one quote already. We're encouraging them to get another quote. But Ben Johnson with Seltzer Management is assisting us with this deal, and to make sure that any steps we take here going forward are actually, getting us to the finish line, which would be getting a certificate of occupancy issued and getting this leased up. So to that effect, on our behalf, he's ordered an appraisal and a physical needs assessment so that we know whether these quotes we're getting from the general contractors are actually for all the items necessary to complete the deal or complete the construction, and for a certificate of occupancy to be issued. So there's no action item we're asking of you right now. This is just an informational item, let you know this is troubled, and this is troubled development, and this is the steps that are being taken. But Mr. Johnson has heard back, at least preliminarily, from the provider of the physical needs assessment, and what he's heard is a little bit different. In your write-up, you'll see that the estimated construction progress is about 95% complete, and that was from the last construction inspection report that we saw. But it seems now that, maybe that 95% was a little on the high side. So I'll let Mr. Johnson.
Thank you. Once again, Ben Johnson with Seltzer Management Group. And yeah, I think it's important to focus on that 95%, which seems like we're almost there. That 95% was from a construction inspection report over 2 years old. Since that time, that property sat vacant. Our inspectors have been out there. They were 3 inspectors that went. They were there all day and inspected every unit. And the preliminary indication that comes back is the number's going to be worse than 5% to go. A couple things is a couple of the buildings are not roofed in properly, and so it's been raining on them for several years. There are a lot of irrigation type issues that may have compromised the foundations on some of the units, and they've all been sitting there in Florida for over 2 years with no air conditioning running. So there's also that of potential for mold as well. So I'm not here to say the sky is falling. I'm just here to say that 5% number may not be the right number we shouldn't be focused on, and we'll have a good report here within the next 30 days that indicates here's what we truly think it's going to take to complete the job.
But we need to take.
I don't think there's a motion.
Oh, there's
in
not a
place
motion.
there.
Not
This is
action. You're right.
informative.
You're right. Yeah.
Sorry, the discrepancy is between what percent complete? Did you say 5% and to 95? Was that
No, excuse me. The write-up includes, that indicates that at the last inspection, they were 95% complete, which indicates there's 5% to go,
Sure.
which was relatively there.
Okay.
The initial indication comes back as well. Let's move it forward, and with the degradation of the property, cost escalations, all those type of things, we're not looking at 5% anymore. We're probably looking at 10% or 15% to go. So.
Thank you.
And how much do we have into this one?
Let's see. So the award was for $4.5 million. I'm not sure if we know.
We're most of the way there.
Yes, so we are most of the way there.
We're-
I could get you a number from,
I think there's less than $1 million to be drawn, and I think it's probably less than 500,000. Unfortunately, I do not have those on top, but we're very much extended here.
And both of these are with this, I was going to use gentleman, that's the poor word, person, Brian Smith with GHD
Construction Services, yes.
He's the co-signer on both of these projects?
He is the co-developer and
Co-developer.
general contractor, but he also signed the guarantees both personally and with the GHD Construction Services.
And on this one, I think it's important to note too, his father also signed the guarantee.
Okay,
there's
so,
two guarantors.
we have personal guarantees from him and on this project for the 4 million, his father on both of these. Thank you.
On this one, the nonprofit, they're going to, they're sticking in, or what's their plan?
Yes, sir, they're planning to stick in and see it to completion and then operate it as well.
But quite frankly too, I mean, we had a co-developer for a reason, that the not-for-profit didn't have the ability and the experience to bring it forward. And so we still have a very inexperienced partner there that obviously gives us some concern in their ability to bring it forward. And so I think they're also, ultimately, will have to partner up with somebody that can get them there.
Understood, but we also have a room full of very talented, capable developers that could be those people with it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And one of the things to think about here too is, yes, this does happen from time to time. I'm sorry, this does happen from time to time, and GCs do get replaced from time to time, but we've got sophisticated developers that can get through that process. And in this instance, we did not have a sophisticated developer that could get through that process. And I think that's very easy to note.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, $3.6 million is what we have into this. That's what's been drawn in home funds.
Okay, any other questions? Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, man.
All right, we'll move on to professional service selections. First, A is Angie.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First item is for Guaranteed Investment Contract Broker. Just as some background, a Guaranteed Investment Contract, or GIC, is an agreement that guarantees a certain rate of return in exchange for holding cash deposits for a specified period. We typically use these to invest bond proceeds until they can actually be lent out. The GIC broker would request bids from guaranteed investment contract providers that meet credit criteria that are included in statutes or the bond indentures or the rating agencies. Florida Housing has used this service in the past, but the last contract expired back in 2015. Market conditions for GICs have not been favorable, and so a new procurement was not done at that time. Based on the current market conditions and after discussions with our investment bankers and our financial advisor, we think it may make sense to utilize these services now. So staff recommends that the board direct staff to proceed with issuing a competitive solicitation for guaranteed investment contract brokers.
Motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Thank you. The next item is to renew a contract for arbitrage rebate analyst services. In 2020, the board authorized Florida Housing to contract with 2 arbitrage rebate analysts, BLX Group LLC and Hawkins, Delafield and Wood LLP. The contracts were for 3 years and may be renewed for 1 3-year period contingent upon satisfactory performance. These contracts expire on June 15th of this year, and staff finds that both parties have performed their obligations in a satisfactory manner. Staff recommends that the board direct staff to proceed with a 3-year renewal option for both BLX Group LLC and Hawkins, Delafield and Wood LLP for arbitrage rebate analyst services.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Yeah, I'll turn mine off. Good. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right. So, David.
Nope, one more. from
Oh,
me.
you got one more.
I got one
Okay,
more.
sorry.
This one is for single-family cash flow provider services. Also in 2020, the board authorized Florida Housing to contract with 2 entities for single-family cash flow provider services, RBC Capital Markets LLC and Kane Mitter and Associates LLC. The contracts were also for 3 years and may be renewed for 1 3-year period, contingent upon satisfactory performance. These contracts expire on June 30th of this year, and staff finds that both providers have performed their obligations in a satisfactory manner. So staff recommends that the board direct staff to proceed with a 3-year renewal option with both RBC Capital Markets LLC and Kane Mitter and Associates LLC for single-family cash flow provider services.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Now, David.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for single source procurement for software related to Davis-Bacon compliance. So the Davis-Bacon Act that requires paying the local prevailing wage on projects that are funded with certain home dollars, and in our case, all of the home rental, dollars are subject to Davis-Bacon, as well as the subrecipient agreement that we are in with DEO for the CDBG-DR funds, all require Davis-Bacon compliance. Our servicers, Seltzer, Marinette, First Housing, perform that function for us currently. But it's a paper and manual, very manual process right now. There is a solution out there through Elation Systems, Inc. Software solution that provides all of the features that we're looking for here, and is also a HUD approved, through a mortgagee letter showing that yes, Elations is a HUD approved provider of this, and they're the only one that has that HUD approved status. So it is staff's recommendation, in order to make this process, which I see Ron nodding at me, can be very, very tedious, and time consuming and difficult, easier by entering into a 1-year single source contract with Elation Systems, Inc. for their Davis-Bacon software solution.
Motion?
Second.
Discussion?
I just have one question. I'm supportive of it. Sounds like it'd save a lot of time. But what's the cost?
So it's my understanding it's based on how often you use it.
Okay.
So it's per development, and then each month that development's active for reporting Davis-Bacon compliance is a monthly fee.
Okay, thank you.
Anything further? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
One quick comment. I sure wish they had that when I was.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Well, we've come to the public comment. So anybody who wants to step forward to comment can have 3 minutes. No public comment. Okay, so the next item is board discussion, and I will lead this off. As most of you know, today will be Trey's last board meeting before he officially leaves his post as executive director for Florida Housing. So I'm going to give him a minute to say a few words, and then I'll say a few words afterwards.
Thank you, Chairman. Just want to say thanks to a few folks. First of all, our staff at Florida Housing that work so hard and believe in the mission of providing affordable housing. I want to thank Senator Rick Scott and former DEO Secretary Sissy Proctor, who brought me on board about 6 years ago, and also Governor Ron DeSantis and former Secretaries Lawson and Eagle, who we continue to work with through the transition until February 1st. I want to thank also the chairs of the board of directors that I've worked with, starting with Barney Smith, then Ray Dubuque, of course Ron Lieberman, and you, Mario. It's been a pleasure to serve with you all. I actually have spoken with all of those gentlemen and indicated my thanks to them and their leadership while I was here. I want to thank my wife, Tara, who couldn't be here today. She's arguing in federal court, so she had a date, not as a defendant, but as a lawyer with a judge. And then I want to thank my predecessors that I've worked with, Steve Auger, who's actually here, Mark Kaplan, Susan Lay, and Mark Hendrickson. Thank you for their guidance and leadership. And I want to thank all of you as board members for your support and working with you over the years, whether it's been long or short. I'm sorry that I'm not going to get to work longer with you, Secretary, and with you, Larry Creedle, who I enjoyed working with when he was in the House. But perhaps, hopefully, our paths will cross again. I will say that there'll likely be an announcement as to my future plans in the coming weeks, and I'll leave it with that I look forward to working with you, and again, hopefully our paths will cross in the future. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for all you've done. Yes. Trey joined in 2017. He's been a fundamental role here in the development of Florida Housing and the success to the corporation. So on behalf of staff and the board, I'd like to present you with a little plaque.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
There you go.
Thank you all very much.
We appreciated your leadership over the last 6 years, and we wish you all the best in the future.
Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, along those lines, okay.
Sorry. I did want to mention that back in 2017, happened to be sitting in Governor Scott's office, and guess who walks in? Trey. And I said, "What are you doing here?" I knew him because he represented the realtors in affordable housing issues when I was helping out, was president of the Builders Association. So we visited separately with Governor Scott at that same time, and the governor chose me for this position and Trey for the executive director position, and it's been a great experience for me as vice chairman for 2 years and chairman for 3. We worked together great, and I really appreciate it, and thanks for everything you've done.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Okay, so along those lines, I just wanted to mention, and everyone's probably seen, there was an announcement, I believe it was last week, but the governor's office has put forth a candidate, Mike DiNapoli, who actually is here today in the back. And so in order for the board to have the opportunity to meet with him and ask questions, to consider him as a candidate, we're going to set a special meeting on February 10th, and that will take place in Fort Lauderdale at the Marriott North. Is that correct? Okay, but that'll be announced and finalized. So at that point, at that meeting, we'll take the nomination from Secretary Ivey, and have discussion and consider a vote at that meeting on February 10th. And that's the only other announcement I had. Is there anything from other board members that you'd like to discuss?
I just want to be quick and just say thank you, Trey.
Thank you, David.
Mr. Chairman, is that the only item that's going to be on the agenda?
Yes, that'll be the only item on the agenda, as I know right now.
Okay, and you require 5 board members?
Correct. It's set for morning. Is that correct, Sheila?
Well, time that we discussed times, but nothing's been set yet.
Okay.
10 o'clock was the most popular one of the discussions that I had, but that would be up to y'all. How easy that is to get to the hotel.
Yeah, I asked that the meeting be set in Fort Lauderdale because there are 5 board members in the South Florida region. So I thought that, for the quorum, that would be relatively easy for travel purposes. And if there's a preferred time, I mean, we can. Yeah. All right. So we'll follow up with time. Any other board discussion? No? Okay. Meeting adjourned. Oh, yes, that's right.
So we are adjourned.
Sorry, we're adjourned from this one. We do have FHFC 2 and FHFC 3. So I will call to order FHFC 2, and Hugh Brown will present.
She needs to just call the roll.
Oh, sorry. Please call the roll, Sheila.
Ron Lieberman,
Here.
Ryan Benson,
Here.
Sandra Einhorn, Mario Ficella,
Here.
David Hall,
Here.
Larry Creedle, Dev Matwani,
Here.
and Meredith Ivey.
Here?
Thank you.
Okay, Hugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For your consideration is Resolution 2023-03 regarding the delegation of temporary signature authority to the CFO, Angie Sellers, and to myself as General Counsel during any interim period before the board hires a new executive director. This is identical to a consent item that you have already approved for the primary corporation. Staff recommends that the board adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any
Thank you.
public comment? Okay. That one's adjourned. Okay, we'll call to order FHFC 3. Sheila, please take the roll.
Ron Lieberman. Ryan Benson.
Here.
Larry Creedle. Sandra Einhorn. Mario Ficella.
Here.
David Hall.
Here.
Dev Matwani.
Here.
Meredith Ivy.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, Hugh.
Second verse, same as the first. This is the identical resolution for FHFC 3 delegating temporary authority to myself and Angie to sign in behalf of the executive director during the interim. Staff recommends you adopt the resolution.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public comment? Okay, adjournment.